Hello there, all you people in My Hero Academia land. I'm doing a tier list video, which I know is strange. You're like, why would you do that when there's so much content going on in the game to talk about? New events, new strategies, challenging raids, anything at all. But to be serious, I've had people in my Alliance Discord asking pretty consistent questions about characters when they come back on reruns, in terms of like, should I pull for them, should I not? What characters do I need, what characters do I not? So I thought I'd do that. So before I jump in, let's set some ground rules. One, all the premium characters are going to be considered to be double S, while all of the farmable characters are going to be considered to be triple S plus, with like the exception of the S rank student 1A characters. I'd say triple S is kind of where I'm at with them, but yeah, like your A ranks and B ranks, those are going to be considered at full rainbow. All characters are going to be rated by tier, not within those tiers. So if I have two characters in a tier, I'm more or less saying they're about the same. I'm not trying to say that a character to the left is better than a character to the right. I think that's getting too particular to be useful. To be clear, this is my opinion. This is not objective fact. I'm not omniscient. I'm not omnipotent. I do not know for a fact. It's just I've played this game a lot. I've worked with people a lot. I've talked about numbers with people. This is a pretty well-informed tier list, I will say. Also, I'm going to do a little mini DPS tier list at the end, and this tier list is going to be more or less a general PVE, so things like agency assessment, hub defense, events. I'll also do tier lists more likely for the auto PvP modes, Scoop and Warzone, as well as an arena tier list. And then maybe I'll do like an overall tier, like if you're like, which characters am I going to get the most bang for my buck on? I'll probably do something like that as a round off video. So with that in mind, let's kind of jump in. We'll start with the premium characters with Aizawa. I would say that Aizawa is an A rank character for general PvE. He does good damage. He has like a counter to kind of get a little bit of damage mitigation. He's just pretty good. He doesn't get interrupted very easily, and he's fun also. Not that that necessarily matters for this kind of tier list, but he is fun. My issue with him is that because so much of his damage comes from his strangle skill going off, if he misses that, his DPS hits the floor. Like, he needs to land that, and I've found that for things like hub defense, some bosses will make it difficult to do that. So because of that, I'd put him in A. He's very good. I do enjoy playing him. It's just when I compare him to characters in S, he is not as consistent. All right, All Might, this shouldn't surprise anybody. For general PvE, he's an S tier character. He is just amazing at dealing a ton of damage. He can group enemies up. He can hit enemies. He has damage reduction. He has shields. He just is the whole package. And because there is just such a dearth of power type characters, you need to pull All Might. The only character that's power that even comes close would maybe be World Hero Mission Bakugo, or even the regular pool Bakugo, but they're not close, to be clear. They're just the closest power characters currently. Also, Chaco's pretty good, but those three are just like, they're not in the same realm as All Might. So All Might S tier for sure. Dabi, I will put him in a solid A. He does decent damage. He has increased defense, and he once he's inflamed, he won't get knocked down very often. But I will say that he's not, again, consistency is an issue for him. He has to be inflamed. Getting inflamed is not always the easiest thing. And even then, his damage isn't like insane. It's just solid. So he's, in my opinion, an A tier character. Funny enough, like Aizawa though, he is very fun to play. In fact, he's one of my favorite characters to play, even if he's not the most damaging. Then we go to Endeavor, who is S tier. He is the definition of consistency. He doesn't hit the like insane high DPS values, but he always does good damage. He always has survivability, and he's just consistent. He's consistently doing good damage and doing well. And I think that really is kind of the jack of all trades S tier character, in my opinion. There isn't a mode that he's bad at. In fact, even something like Arena or Warzone, all this stuff he's either A or S tier in. I don't think there's a game mode where he's just bad. He's always at least good. So yeah, for sure I'd put him in S tier. Okay, Hawks. I will put him for general PvE, for things like agency assessment, hub defense, stuff like that. He's an S tier. He does insane single target damage. I have a guide out about it if you guys want to look at that. He does everything pretty dang well. The one real issue he has is against mobs, but even then that's not really an issue, since most of your time spent in these modes is going to be against bosses. And for something like hub defense, the only thing you're doing is fighting bosses. And that's where Hawks shines. So for general PvE, I would say that he's an S tier character. Shigaraki. So this one is probably the premium character that I have the least experience with. But even with that in mind, he's going to be. He's able to do very, very good damage, but getting him to do that damage is very difficult. He can be interrupted very easily. He has to get Nomu out, and when Nomu's not out, he is struggling against enemies that he can't grab. And that's really his main problem. If he consistently got the same amount of his decay meter off of enemies that can't be picked up as he did against the mobs, I would probably put him in A, because his damage can just hit such high caps. But for, agency assessment, stuff like that, he's not up there. He himself has very little armor to go off of. It's really all from Nomu, and that's about it. Stain, this is easy, S tier. He's another character that doesn't really have a mode that he's bad in. And for general PvE, he is brain dead easy also. He has armor on basically everything. He has damage reduction on his E skill, which is crazy. And he can just consistently put out good damage over and over and over and over again. So yeah, he's an S tier character. Luckily for speed characters, you can pick Stain or Hawks and do pretty well with them. But if you're like, I want somebody that's going to be good at everything, you pick Stain. Hawks is a character that has a couple of modes where he'll definitely excel against Stain, but he also has modes where he will fall way short of. So Stain is another character that just does really well in basically every mode. And then let's see, we have 3 World Hero Mission characters. They're all pretty good. Let's start with Bakugo, who I would put again in A. He does good damage. He has some armor. He does not have defense though. He will get rolled pretty hard on higher level difficulties, but his damage is good. In fact, his damage is better than the other 2 A characters by quite a bit. I might want to do a guide on this to kind of show how he works, but if you're timing his quirk skills and his temporary sweat meter right, he just drops a nuke with his quirk skill. So A tier, he's a good character, does good damage, has decent amount of armor on his stuff, and by armor I mean he won't get interrupted. He doesn't have damage mitigation, unfortunately. World Hero Mission Deku is, for general PvE, he's S tier. He can just fly around the map, deal a ton of damage. If you do a build with him built around his ult using Mirio and Mastermind, and then Dance with the Wind, he will do ludicrous amounts of damage. And when it comes to things like hub defense and when it comes to agency assessment, you're able to space out your quirk skill to where when you go and burn it up and you're in that kind of low damage period, it doesn't matter because the boss is already dead. So yeah, S tier. He just does an insane amount of damage. Lots of fun too. And World Hero Mission Shoto is also S tier. Just so much damage. He's able to freeze enemies. He can become invulnerable for short periods of time with his quirk skill. It's just, he's crazy good. Lots of range, very, very good, very consistent. So that's the premium characters. I would say that in general PvE, there isn't a bad premium character, but at the same time, Shigaraki does lag behind the others quite a bit, in my opinion. So the rest of the characters are all technically farmable, even if it doesn't kind of feel that way to start, but eventually you will have all of these characters, and honestly, even the S ranks you'll have at double S or higher within a few months. So yeah, let's start with Bakugo. Bakugo, I put him right next to his World Hero Mission counterpart. They both have the same issue. They deal lots of good damage. They have lots of ways to not be interrupted, and they have no defense. They will die so fast if you don't manage them really well. So yeah, basically the same. Plain Deku is C, as in he's not very good. He doesn't have armor. He just gets knocked over. It's really hard to do combos with him, and even when you do those combos, you're not really getting a lot of damage there. You're just kind of getting okay damage. Froppy, I'd put Froppy in A. Now, personally, I'm not that great at using her outside of like auto or for things like Scoop or Warzone, but I have been around a lot of Froppies from people that actually know how to use her. She can do insane burst damage and overall have pretty good damage. It still isn't quite where somebody like Hawks would be, but it is good damage, and considering that she's free to play, that's pretty solid as well. I'd also put Ida in A tier for general PvE. Now for DPS, he's the king. He and Hawks do, I think, pretty much easily the highest DPS to single targets. But in general, things like agency assessment and hub defense, there are so many times where Ida will get interrupted and knocked off his rhythm, and then his DPS will plummet. If he loses his build-up, he has to start over, and that takes a lot of time. If he's able to maintain his build-up, he does a ton of damage. I've definitely played agency assessment with Idas that have destroyed, but I've also played with the same level of BP Idas that have done absolutely nothing. It depends on whether they can consistently attack enemies and build up their gauge. If they can't do that, they do basically nothing. So I put him in A. He can do good damage, but it's not consistent. Danky, I put him in B. He can do good damage. Most of the time, he's kind of doing mediocre damage. In fact, he's one of those characters where I'm like, he could be in C for things like agency assessment and hub defense, but at the same time, he can do decent crowd control. This is not the mode that he has high use case in. Warzone and Scoop are where he just excels. For this mode, he's just kind of okay. Kirishima is C. He can't deal enough damage, and all of his attacks can pretty much only hit one enemy, and he doesn't have a way to move quick, so he's just kind of stuck most of the time. He won't die, like he has so much defense, but that's about it. Mina, I'll put her in B. Mina's kind of frustrating for me because she's really fun to play. She has lots of armor, lots of ways to debuff and buff herself, and well, debuff the enemies and buff herself and her allies, but her damage just it does not hit the levels of like the A tiers and higher. So she's good, but she's not good enough. Minetta's kind of hard to pin down. I've definitely seen people that know how to use him that I'd put him like, you know, maybe an A. I've never seen a Minetta where I'm like, this dude's doing S tier damage. This guy really knows it. But I've definitely seen A tier damage from him. But in general, you really have to invest in him, and there are so many characters free to play and otherwise that you would want to invest in before Minetta, so he kind of falls lower for me. Let's see, Momo. For general PvE, I'd have to put her in B. She can do decent damage, and she does buff allies, but one of her major weaknesses is she can be interrupted basically anytime she attacks. You have to put an unconscious monster on her. She needs hyper armor. If she doesn't have that, you won't be able to chain into her weapon switching, and she'll just get rolled real fast. So yeah, I definitely put her there. Shoto. Now, I think I would put him in A, tentatively. Personally, I can never get this guy to work. Like, I don't know what his combos are. For me, he'd be a solid B, but I have been around Shotos that aren't like, you know, not triple S plus, but just like double S Shotos that are in the same general range as mine, and they have kept up. Not against, like, you know, Hawks or All Might or Stain, but against, you know, Dabi, Aizawa, World Hero Mission Bakugo. They've come close or been in that range. So I will tentatively put him in A tier. I know he can do the damage. I just don't know how the hell they do it. A more certifiably A tier, maybe sometimes S tier, depending on what's going on, is Tokiyami. Now, this guy basically needs to be at triple S or higher so that he's consistently getting into rage mode in order to be effective, because once he's in rage mode, he has armor on everything, he heals, he does crazy good damage, but when he's not in rage mode, he falls off. I think that if he's triple S plus, he might squeak into S, but I feel comfortable putting him in A tier for sure. He is 100% keeping up with these other characters here. So yeah, I would definitely put Tokiyami here. And then Ochako is A tier. She does good damage. Now, she can get interrupted. You really have to space her properly because she doesn't really have hyper armor on anything. But if you're going into the air at the right times, she does good damage. She obviously has her E that just hits the entire map with high DPS for a few seconds. She can increase her damage with her W. She's just really solid, and you can definitely pump her up to where she's doing good damage, and that's about it. Yeah, I'd put her at a solid A tier. So yeah, this feels pretty good. I think this is where I'd put the general, like, agency assessment, hub defense, things like that. And then let's talk about things like mock contest or DPS trials, you know, boss raid, stuff like that. So, you know, we throw Ojiro here. Listen, don't worry, Ojiro, fantastic. Don't worry about it. I'm totally not putting him at the top because it's a meme. So for the DPS thing, I'm just going to talk about a few characters that are very good and why they're very good. And then that's more or less it. So the obvious one is Ida. Ida is insanely good at DPS challenges. He does need, I'd say, like a minute or longer on the clock to really hit his stride. But once he does, he can do the most single target damage pretty much in the game. His other big weakness besides ramp, well, it is still ramping up, is if he is interrupted in his combo, that's it. You basically have to restart the challenge and do it over again. And it's very easy, depending on the boss, for him to get knocked on his ass. So I put him in S tier 100%, but he does require a lot of work to get that done. The other S tier single target DPS character is Hawks. So Hawks is interesting because he won't hit the same DPS levels as Ida. A lot of times when I'm doing boss raid, I will notice that day to day, I'm exchanging with the other people that use Ida when I use Hawks. There are some bosses that Ida's better at and some bosses that Hawks is good at. The main strength of Hawks is he does not get knocked down. He always gets up again, never gonna keep him down. He has so much armor and he gets to his high DPS state in like 15 seconds. So for challenges that are a minute or less, usually that's going to be Hawks' territory because he can just pump out so much damage so fast that Ida would still be getting up to his DPS, his optimal DPS. And so I would say 100% that Hawks is in the same range as Ida. But of course, that is the difference though between a premium character that I'm considering at double S versus a free-to-play character that is rainbowed. You should have Ida, and honestly, if you've been playing for a few months, you should have Ida at least at double S or higher. So if you're not worried about having Hawks, Ida is going to do the job for you and then some. And you can definitely, like, if you really learn Ida, he's going to go crazy. But for me, I personally like how consistent Hawks is, and that I'm never worried about whether or not an enemy is going to disappear for a second and I drop my gauge and I lose it. Hawks does not care about that. It's just a matter of, is Hawks getting as much DPS as he wants? Oh no, the enemy disappeared. It doesn't matter. He just gets his ult again in 10 seconds. And then let's see, another character to consider, I'd put her in A, is Froppy. She's different though because she does burst damage very, very fast and for a short period of time. I've seen people put up good numbers with her, but it is nowhere near as high as Ida or Hawks, for sure. And other characters to consider for this are for situations where you're doing mock contests and it's one of the lower levels where you need to kill an enemy very fast. So let's kind of take these guys out of here because that's not really what any of them are good at. Well, sorry, Froppy is. She's pretty good at it. But the characters that are good at killing small enemies very fast are ones that usually have some kind of teleport or jump in or something. And that's actually, like, I would say, I'm trying to think here. I can't confirm this because my Shigaraki is not nearly built up. However, I do know that on my server, people get damage with Shigaraki very fast. Another character, he's finally up here. Deku. If your Deku's kitted out, he has a Q, he teleports, he can do damage. If that enemy can die in one hit, he'll do it basically the fastest of anybody. Another character, Stain. Stain does it very fast. For power, I actually find Bakugo very good. In fact, I'd say for power, it's like him or Ochako. I think maybe Ochako's a bit better because she can do that, just that kind of, burst damage with her E. But Bakugo, I use him for mine, and he does very, very quick damage. Aizawa also does very quick damage. Let's see, is anybody else I'm missing? Denki does pretty good quick damage. I think that's more or less it. These guys are also pretty good. World Mission Shoto and Deku. They're not as fast, I feel like, but if it's an enemy that takes like 2 hits, these are all characters that will do really well if the enemy can die in a couple of hits and you're just trying to squeeze in a little bit more score for that. So yeah, that's my tier list. I think that for most premium characters, they're gonna do you pretty well. But one thing that you absolutely should consider is that for each typing, you want to have really good characters that will do a lot. And so, like, for power, it's All Might. For tech, it's Endeavor or World Hero Mission Shoto. I'd say World Hero Mission Shoto is probably a little bit better than Endeavor, but of course, he's limited, so it's very unlikely that you'll be able to get him. For speed, it's Hawks and Stain. I would say that Stain is overall a little bit better than Hawks because there aren't modes that he's bad in, but there are definitely modes that Hawks is bad in. On the other hand, Hawks can do more DPS than Stain, so it's kind of up to you. For power, World Hero Mission Bakugo is pretty dang good. I don't think he's nearly as consistent as All Might. And then, if you get Dabi or Aizawa, for tech and speed, they'll do you pretty good. They're not as good as the characters in S tier for premium. And then Shigaraki, you can make him work. He can do decent damage, but it's that's a work of passion, man. That's definitely you are working really hard to get something. And then World Hero Mission Deku is S tier as well. I'd say that for something like Agency Assessment or Hub, he's definitely in the same range as these guys. DPS, he doesn't do crazy though. He is lacking behind, I think, even Stain, but definitely behind Hawks. So yeah, that's my tier list for general PVE. Please let me know if you guys have any comments. I'm always looking to learn more about characters, kind of their little quirks, if you will, and what things you can do to really squeeze out more performance out of them. So if you have a controversial take, just be cool in the comments. I'm not trying to tell you that your favorite character sucks or anything like that, but I would love to learn more. So talk to you guys later.